Hello, welcome to IO Code. Once again, we have a Springboot application on our screen. And in today's video, what we'll practically be doing is deploying this particular application using the AWS code pipeline service for the deployment. So the code pipeline simply helps us carry out a CI/CD scenario, that is continuous integration and continuous deployment. So before we get started, this is a book project I did a couple of weeks back. So the complete video tutorial is in channel. You can check it out. And then if you want to see how to start up the Spring Boot project, then you can come back and see how we're going to be deploying this application. But then again, if you have an application you want to deploy, you can just follow along with the video tutorial. So right here, I'll just show you one thing you need in order for you to be able to make use of the um, AWS code pipeline for the deployment of this application. So you need the buildspec.yaml file. So that file will be directly under the project directory. Okay, so this is the content of the file. We have a version, we have different phases. We have the build phase at first, we have the post build phase, and you are going to be looking at all of this when we deploy this application. Now this is in a new branch called testing AWS deployment, and you just see it in a couple of minutes from now. So this Maven clean package is what will build the jar file, and AWS code pipeline service will practically just store the jar file in a configured S3 bucket that will be created alongside the environments that will be used to run the application. So enough of those, let's get started with the deployment. So right here, I want to move over to the AWS service website, and I'll sign into my console. And I have a couple of services I've visited prior to this moment. Now, if you can't find the code pipeline here, probably you haven't yet made use of this particular service. All you have to do is search for the code pipeline in the search bar. But since I already have it here, I'll just click on it, and we're going to be creating a new code pipeline for our Spring Boot application. So we create a pipeline, and I want to give the name of my pipeline. That should be IO code book API pipeline, and I'll use superseded. Then I'll leave the new service role. Everything is good to go, so I click on next. Now my service provider is GitHub version 2, so I'll click on GitHub version 2. And prior to this moment, I already connected my GitHub repository to my AWS account. So if you are here to do that, you have to connect to your GitHub repository, so you'll be able to choose the particular repository you want the project to be or deployed. So I have a connection, so I just click on here to present the connection. So this should be the connection I'll be using, and yes, I have to provide my repository name, and that is the IO code book project repository in my own scenario. Okay, depending on the application you are deploying, yours will be different. So the branch I'm deploying now is the testing app deployment branch, so I'll click on it, and we'll leave this one as the default. Okay, and then all of these are good to go, so we'll click on next, and we want to add source stage. So our build provider should be AWS code build. That is why we pretty much need the build spec file, and we scroll down a bit, and I don't have any AWS code build project, so I'll have to create one. So I'll create project. So right here, I'll give my project a name. That should be IO code book API code build. Okay, and scroll down. I'll leave the rest as they are. Now my operating system should be left as Amazon Linux standard. In our AWS code build, we want to always use the latest image for our runtime build. So we also make use of a service role. So the role will be created automatically during the start phase of the during the creation phase of this code build instance. So I'll say IO code book API code build role. So we are not inserting any build command, but we are using a build spec file. So you just click on this particular one, and you don't really have to provide the path to that build spec file if it's directly under the project directory. So oops, let's see. So everything is practically good to go. So we continue to code pipeline. Leave. So we successfully created our code build. Now we go to the next stage, and our deploy provider is practically the instance we want to use in the deployment of this application. Now we'll be making use of elastic beanstalk. So I'll click on elastic beanstalk, and we have to create a new application for our elastic beanstalk. So create an application that you've already choose an application that you have already created in the AWS Elastic Beanstalk console. So we are going to create a new AWS Elastic Beanstalk environment. So I'll right click on this one, I'll duplicate the page, right here I want to click on service again. So my recently visited, I have Elastic Beanstalk, so I'll make use of that one. Leave the site. So you can see I have an instance of Elastic Beanstalk prior to this moment. So I was just playing around with things. But now I want to create a new environment. So I'll click on create environment, and we make use of the web server environment. I'll just simply say IO code book API app. So an environment name has been generated for us. Then our platform should be Java, and we should have the version 21, Corretto 21, running on 64-bit Amazon Linux as for 2023, since our application has the Java version 21. So I want to click on next. Then always ensure you are making use of the free tier instance. Only when you are deploying application, a commercial application, should you change it. Now we click on next. The free tier is for a year, so make sure you make use of it to its maximum. So right now we want to make use of an existing service role, because I have a service role for previous Elastic Beanstalk applications I've created. So I'm making use of an existing service role. Now if you want to create a new service role, all you have to do is click on this part and you change the name, but I'll make use of an existing service role in this scenario. And Elastic Beanstalk makes use of an EC2 instance. So I'll advise you to check out a video I did prior to this one on how to create a new role. So we pretty much just deployed a single jar file application in AWS, but then in that particular video I created a new role, and that new role is the IO code book ABI EC2 role. So this is the role we are going to be making. So I click on this role and then next. So why it was loading just now, I want to let you know something. If that role is not present, an instance of the EC2 role is not present, our application would fail to start. So we just have to skip the rest, and then we skip to review, Okay, so we'll take a look at our configuration before we finally set up the beanstalk. So, okay, we've configured our environment, configured service assets, or we skipped network, instance trafficking and scaling, and configure updates, monitoring and logging is one thing we have to edit. Okay, right here we have the path to Gradle, the bin, and the Maven directory. But then again, we want to include a new environment variable. So I'll just edit this part. Let's see. Edit. Okay. So right here in the environment variables section, we want to add an environment property, and it should be port in all caps. And we want to expose the endpoint 8080. By default, it makes use of Nginx, and Nginx is going to expose the port 5000, but our application is exposing port 80. So if we try to access the application, it's going to result in a 502 gateway error. So we have to add this environment property, this particular environment property called the port, and then we nest. It's already raining outside. So what we basically want to do now is to submit in order for us to create this beanstalk environment. So our beanstalk is being created, so we give it some time, and when it's done we continue with the creation of our pipeline. So right now that our elastic beanstalk instance have been created, we can make use of it. So that should be IO code book API app, and then we choose the environment, and then we just click on next. So finally we have the deploy stage, and everything is as is. So here I'll create pipeline. So we have this error that states the trigger configuration for the source action is not valid. So this should be from our stage 2, which is the add source stage, and right here we want to make use of the proper configuration. So instead of filter we have to say no filter, and we click on next again. Okay, code build, and click on next, and we next, and then we can finally create our pipeline. So we have 3 stages in the creation of this pipeline. First of all, we have the source stages, the source stage where it takes the code from our particular version control service provider, which is GitHub. And then next we have the build phase. So the build phase is practically going to take a look at what we have in our buildspec.yaml file, and then it runs those commands. And finally we have the deploy phase, where it's going to deploy the particular created jar file to our AWS Elastic Beanstalk instance that we've created. So after the creation of this instance, after a successful deployment, we are going to take a look at the application. So right now our application has successfully been deployed. So I'll tell you something that happened in between the phase where we started the deployment and this particular time where the deployment ended. But at first, let us see the endpoint that it exposed. So I'll just click on this part. So it takes us to the environment page, and I want to take a look at the domain. So I'll click on the domain, and I have access to IO Codebook API denied. So I have a 403 back. This is because of the way I've designed the application. So if you've seen the application, you know that there's a restriction to most of the pages except you authenticate. Okay, so that's just basically it. Now back to the code pipeline. The application initially was making use of a Java version of 21, but then during the build phase, I don't really know what happened, but version 21 resulted in a compile error, so I had to change that version to 17. So when I changed the version from 21 to 17, the build was successful. So what I'll be doing again is that I'll be changing that version from 17 once again to 21. So we see how the CI/CD environment works. So I just undo this little change I made. Then back to my terminal, I want to add, then commit, and then I'll just simply push to my branch in my GitHub repository. So back to code pipeline, let us see what's going to happen here. So since I've pushed, we now have the source in progress, and after the source in progress, we are going to have the build in progress. So if our source is complete, build stage will kick in. So we get to see that any changes that is being pushed to our GitHub repository would automatically kickstart our code pipeline to ensure that the latest change will be what will be deployed in our environment. And so right now we can see that the build phase has failed. This is because of the Java version that we have in our pom.xml file. So that is just basically it on how the AWS code pipeline works. So whatever changes that is being sent to our repository, it automatically kickstarts our code pipeline to deploy the latest version of our project. Okay, so that practically brings us to the end of this CI/CD development and deployment in AWS. And I'll love to tell you guys one more time that if you are here to subscribe to this channel, please do so. It gives me the encouragement, it encourages me to make more videos like this. And please do give this video a thumbs up to help the YouTube algorithm, as well as pinging that bell icon so that whenever another video goes live, you get notified. Peace out, and until the next one, keep being your best self. I remain Ayo Codes.